It's a pleasure for me to see you in action and being able to see what you do for others. I love that. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being willing to share your great insights on communication IQ. As I said, I have known about this from last year when we worked together. It gave me a mind-blowing kind of perspective, insights about our communication IQ. So thank you so much for sharing that with me without reservation. Yeah, I really appreciate that part. And that makes me go further and invite you to share with more people through our mini talk platform, which I know is your passion too. I know you are so ready and willing to offer help, to add value to other people. Okay, before Diana, you started to start to share, I want to have all the audience know tonight's agenda. So we will start with Diana's sharing about 30 minutes, right? Yeah,
that's right.
Okay, so following that part, we want to, have more time for people to ask questions and interact with Diana. So following that, I will have some questions to discuss with you since our time is limited, and I believe people will have many questions about this topic. So I highly encourage all the people, all the audience to post your question in the chat box. For those who are more comfortable to post in Chinese, you can still post your questions in Chinese. So our volunteer Yu will later translate them into English for Diana to answer. Sounds good? Okay, so I will pass the floor to Diana. It's your time, it's your show.
All right, I'll take it. All right, thank you everyone for joining tonight. It's such a pleasure for me to be here. And what I wanted to talk about tonight is just the importance of communication. We all know how important it is for us to communicate. The Life Languages International, just for you guys to know, has been around for over 30 years. And we've been doing assessments for 30 years and gathering data. And one of the things that we know for sure and that we have observed is that everyone has a need to be heard and to be understood. We want our point of view to be out there for people to hear what we have to say, but we also want to make sure that they can understand us. But sometimes, it's hard for us. We may not speak up when we really feel like we want to say something, but we say, stay quiet. And why do you think that is? Why do you think it is that sometimes we don't speak when we really have a burning desire to say something, but we stay quiet? And I believe that that is because, of course, fear. Fear keeps us oftentimes from saying the things that are on our mind. But how can we overcome that fear? And when we talk about fear, it's interesting to me that the types of fear that you might think about, it's fear of failure, that we might say the wrong thing. Sometimes it's fear of success, that we will say the right thing, but then all the attention is on us, right? We don't want all that attention on us. Sometimes it's fear of embarrassment. Maybe we don't say, what we think we should have said. Sometimes it's the fear of the unknown, what's going to happen once I say what I say. So part of what I want to help you tonight with Life Languages is helping you, one, overcome those fears, helping you learn how to, what we call, bridge the communication gap, so that whenever you're conversing with someone, you can be listening for certain words to help you connect with them more quickly and easier. And you can help bridge the communication so that you can better communicate with them and better connect with them. And we believe that you will connect with them faster than you would without using this tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and start a presentation. Here we go. All right. Because I want to get through this in a timely manner, because I have so much, like Ivy said, this is a very intense system. There's a lot to learn, and I still learn. I've been doing it for a while now, and I'm still learning. And so I have a lot I love to say, but I want to try to keep it to where you guys will have times to ask questions. So the main thing about communication IQ and life languages is we are an assessment and a system that helps you firmly about communication. So our desire is to crack the communication code, to help people understand what it is that they have within them to speak and what their style of speaking is. And so we, through our research and how we have developed the system, have come up with 7 languages that all of us speak. We all speak 7 languages. And so what I'm going to talk about today is all of these languages in their purest form. I'm not going to give you all the information about them because they have many characteristics and qualities, but I am going to give you a taste of each one. But I want you to think about these individuals kind of without faces, but each one has characteristics, qualities that we're going to learn, just like we might get to know a new friend. So think about each language as maybe a friend that you're getting to know, and how you can understand how they may be a little different than how you are, and they may communicate a little differently than you do. So what are we really talking about here? We're talking about this puzzle of when you meet someone, how do you connect? How do you get together with them? How do you really understand them and they understand you very quickly? But also you want to truly understand them. You want them to truly understand you and not to have as many miscommunications. And I'll give you some examples. I definitely have some examples of my husband and I on when we've had some miscommunications. So I can give you some examples of that as we go through the languages. Now, the 2 areas of effectiveness that we believe in life languages that is extremely key to communicating well is what we call using your character. So character, we define as what you do, even if it's difficult, you still make the right decision. It's those character qualities like integrity, honor, respect, having those character qualities that show the other people that you're around that you honor them, that you respect them, and that you want to communicate well with them, that it's not all about you, it's about making sure you connect with them. And of course, the second part is communication, ensuring that you're communicating well. So today, whenever I talk, I want you to think about 2 different things. One, life languages is about how do we become more aware of ourselves. So what we do is we do a profile. I'll show you an example of one here in a second, but we do a profile, and in the profile, you'll do an assessment, and it will assess your languages and tell you what order your languages are in, from the most important, from the most and the highest that you speak to the least that you speak. I'll explain it more as we go. So one of the main points is how you can become aware and really understand yourself. And then how do you internalize the 7 life languages so that you can recognize them when you're speaking to someone else? When someone is speaking a language that maybe isn't your primary language, your first language, how do you recognize that? And then how do you bridge the gap? How do you know how you can speak with them and understand them a little better, because their language maybe isn't quite as high on your list and in your profile. So what we say at Life Languages is, that there aren't really 7 billion people in the world. And I think actually the latest census said there's maybe close to 8 billion now, but there's really only 7. And if you truly understand the life languages, you will learn and know the 7 languages that we're going to talk about today, that every person, yourself and every other person in the world, speaks. So first I'm going to talk about the intelligence categories. So our 7 languages are in 3 intelligence categories. And what that really means is, how does that language first react to something that they hear? For instance, we'll start with the ACT category. So our ACT category has the mover and the doer language. And I'll get into more details on this language here in a minute. But your mover and your doer, whenever they hear information, the first thing going on in their mind is, what do I need to do? How do I need to act? You know, what is there that needs to be done about this situation? They're very action focused. The next section of intelligences is our feel category. We call it the emotive. And these languages, their first response is to feel. How do I feel about this? Does this make me feel good? Does this make me feel bad? They really want to know, how does the emotion work into the conversation? And then third category is the think category, your cognitive. And these people, whenever they have these languages that are primary in their profile, they want to know, they want to think about it. They're very contemplative. One of the languages titles is contemplator because they want to think about it. And these are my top languages. All three of my three first languages are exactly shaper, producer, and contemplator. So I'm a deep thinker. I think a lot about what I'm going to do. Sometimes I overthink things. And so, but because of life languages, I'm now aware of that. And I know that if I think too much on things, I never act. So I need to be sure that, yes, I give things a lot of thought, but then I don't forget to actually act. Actually, one of the problems that I have sometimes is I forget to talk. You know, I can have long conversations going on in my head because I'm thinking so much, but I never speak. And so then, for instance, with my relationship with my husband, I think I have conversations that I never had because I don't actually speak them out. They're all in my head. So we really, as we learn about the languages and we learn about which one we do first, do we act first, do we feel first, do we think first, it helps us understand how better to communicate with those around us. So the keys to success in the life languages are the filter question, and I'm going to review these with all the languages. It's how do you see things? What do you filter things through? There's usually a question that you filter things through as you hear communication. Every language has a specific need from others. What is that need? Every language has a driving passion. What are you so passionate about that if you don't actually get to live out that passion, you become frustrated? You don't feel fulfilled. And then what is the key character strength of a language? What is that one character strength that each language has that makes it different from the others and makes it so unique and special? So we'll talk about that. So if you were to take a Kindle Life Language Profile, that's what it's called, a communication IQ assessment, you would get a score, and this is what it would look like. And so this is your primary language. As I speak about your top language, it would be here. This is just an example of one. And then it puts them in descending order to your seventh language. And you would get your language score, which is the percentage of each one that you speak. And then you get your rating. Is it high on your profile, moderate, or low? And then the gap. And all the gap means is, what is the gap between this language and this language? So between responder and doer, it's 5.06. The really only thing about the gap is if the gap is low, it just means it doesn't take you a lot of energy to move from one language to the other. So for instance, from responder to doer, not a lot of energy. However, if you notice here, from producer to mover, there's actually from mover to influencer, there's a large gap. It's 24.78. When there's a large gap, it just means it takes more energy for you to move from that language to the other. Now, are you really thinking I'm moving from one language to the other? No, it's very, it's being done subconsciously, but it does take your energy. And so that's something just to be aware of. The other thing that we would tell you to do if you had your profile is to make a line or draw a line between any language that is 50 percentage points and above, and then 50 percentage points and below. And the only difference is anything that's 50 percentage points and above, you're going to speak those languages pretty fluently. Just like for many of you, you speak Chinese very fluently. In addition, you speak English very well. So you might have two languages that you speak very well. But maybe you don't speak Russian so well or not at all. And it might be down here, below 50 at the lower. So what we just let everyone know is anything above 50, when you speak those languages more fluently, takes less energy. You don't have to think about it so much. You're able to do it more easily. The ones below 50 take a lot more energy. You do have to think about it. You do have to really kind of try to put yourself in that other person's shoes. So that's really the main difference between anything above 50 or below 50 for you to know. So we won't go into anything more about the profile, but I just wanted you to be aware of that. So if you decide to take a profile, you'll at least have that bit of information. All right. So we're going to get into the languages, and the first set of languages we're going to talk about are the ACT, or the kinetic intelligences. And these are people who approach life and communication through action first. And this is our mover and our doer. Now, one thing that I will tell you, and I'll tell you this in a minute, is whenever you have languages in a similar category, they all are very different. Your mover and your doer are very different, and I'm about to tell you why. So let's look at the mover. So the major characteristics of a mover is that they're innovative, they're direct, and they have very high standards. When you're around a mover, they have all these ideas. Movers have lots of ideas. I call them, idea people, and they're wonderful to have on your staff or to be around because they're always thinking of new processes. They look at processes and they say, hey, how can we improve this process? How can we raise it to a higher standard? They also tend to be very direct in their speech. So sometimes movers can hurt feelings. So they have to be aware of that because sometimes they can come across very direct. But it's just something to understand about a mover. They don't mean anything by it. They want to get moving. So sometimes they just say things very point blank so that we can understand and then move on. The other characteristics are the keys to success of a mover is the filter question. So if you're interacting with a mover, what they're going to ask is, what is your motive? They want to make sure, and the reason that they ask, what is your motive? And it's kind of the question always in the back of their mind is because of their need from others. Their need from others is action and congruency. And what that means is, does what you say match what you do? So does your actions and your words match each other? If they're seeing that you're saying one thing, but yet your action is something else, they're going to be wondering if you have a pure motive. What is your motive? So that's very important for a mover. Also, their passion, as I mentioned, is to innovate. They love to be innovative. They love to think of new things. They love to drive and blaze new trails. It's just a very passionate thing from a mover. And the thing about a passion is that it's normally something that a person has from when they were a very small child. It's a passion that they have. You may have a child, or maybe even yourself as a mover, you always as a child were thinking about, how can I develop something new, or how can I do that differently than that person did it to make it better? That's what our movers often do. And then their key character strength is courage. The wonderful thing about movers is they're not afraid to go into danger. A lot of times your movers are people like firefighters, or they may be emergency room physicians, because they're not afraid to get into these very high stress jobs or high stress situations. My husband is a high mover. And one of the things that I notice with him is he has this kind of a sixth sense to know when we're maybe something's kind of dangerous or unsettling. And so I've had to learn to listen to that, because I don't pay any attention to it at all. I might walk out in the middle of a street not realizing that I shouldn't be walking out there, but he's going to catch me and he's going to notice that a car was coming that I didn't notice. So movers have the sense of knowing that there may be danger around, or that there may be something that they need to be aware of. And oftentimes in emergency situations, movers know exactly what they need to do to keep people safe. It's like their mind comes up with this plan, and they're the ones that are telling people, get over here and get out of the way of danger. It's just a very important thing to a mover, and it's just a character strength that they have that the rest of us may not have as highly in our profile, depending on how it falls in your profile. So that is the mover. The next ACT category, and again, we're going through, there's just so much more I could tell you about each one of these, but we have a short period of time. And so I'm going to run through them fairly quickly, but you can always send me information later if you want more information. The next category for ACT is the doer. Now, a doer is very different from a mover. Your doer major characteristics are that they are practical, they're diligent, and they're detailed. So your doer is someone who is someone that likes to work with their hands. They may be a carpenter, someone that loves to do projects, someone that maybe as an artist. Artists love to work with their hands depending on what kind of art they do. So they're very diligent in what they do. They really get to the details of things. They really look at, I have a friend that's a doer, very high doer. She always knows if I change my hair or if I move the furniture around in my house. They just notice those little things. Whereas your mover won't notice that, because your mover is trying to get moving. They're always looking at big picture. They're visionaries. And so they might not notice the details. So then when we get into the keys to success of a doer, their filter question is, are you doing your share? A lot of time your doers, because they're doing, they're always the ones oftentimes that stay late at work because they're getting all the tasks done. They're making sure that things get done and get finished. Because one of the really important things of a doer, which I'll say in a second, is their passion, and their passion is to finish. Their need from others is an action. They want you to be doing. They want you to be doing your share, but they want to be appreciated. They want to be sure that all this hard work that they put in, all the hours that they put in, that you appreciate what they're doing and how hard they work. Like I mentioned, the passion of a doer is to finish. So this is why a doer and a mover is very different. Your doers finish. If you give them a timeline or if you give them a task, they are going to get it finished. Your mover, oftentimes, they'll just keep moving on to the next thing. They come up with great ideas. There are definitely those people that, are great at setting strategy, but they're probably not the best person to put on it to actually execute the strategy or the plan, because they are just really good at getting things set up and going, and then they need to move on to their next strategy or their next vision, while our doers help us finish the work. So that's why the two categories are very act focused, but they do it actually very differently. And the key character strength of your doer, oops, sorry. My PowerPoint just closed on me, so I'm sorry about that. These things always happen, right, whenever you're in the middle of important presentations. Sorry. All right, before we finish here, so sorry, you guys. Oh, and I gotta switch, sorry. Here we go. Okay, and the key character strength for the doer is trustworthiness. Again, because they are so diligent in getting their work done, because they really pay attention to the details. You can really trust a doer to get a job done if they say they're going to get it done. So wonderful character strength for the doer. The next categories is our emotive categories. So these are the people that approach life and communicate through feeling first. They're very emotive. And this is our influencer and our responder. And again, in the same category, but still very different languages. So our influencer. The major characteristics of an influencer is they're very intuitive. They're very inclusive, and they're enthusiastic. So an influencer is a person, they're the person that whenever you go to a party or an event, they know everybody, because they are an excellent networker. They love to include everyone. They're wonderful at parties. They are usually the life of the party. They love to have fun. That enthusiasm comes out. So they're just wonderful people to be around. I love being around influencers. And the intuitiveness about them is they're great at sales, and they're also very good at doing contracts and negotiations, because they have this intuition about them that helps them get into win-win situations. So wonderful things to have influencers in our lives. And the keys to success of an influencer, their filter question is, are we communicating? Very important to influencers to ensure that everybody's communicating, everybody's getting along, everybody's getting to be heard. Again, they're very inclusive. Their need from others, and it's an innate need that they have that they must have met. So sorry, you guys, don't know what's going on with my computer. is affirmation and connectedness. They really want to be affirmed that, that they're, that people like them. They're usually the ones that are very encouraging. They need encouragement too. But again, they really want to be connected with people. Being connected with people is really important. I know during COVID for our influencers, for some of them, it was really hard to be having to be, in their home and not out with their friends because they have a need to be connected to others. Their passion is to encourage, very important to them to encourage people. These are the people that you'll get a note from, in the middle of the day that just says, I hope you're having a good day. Or they're the ones that, if you're having a tough time, they'll send you a card. They're just wonderful about encouraging people and helping people have, good days. And the reason that their color is yellow is because they bring sunshine to our lives. And again, the key character strength of the influencer is enthusiasm. They have great enthusiasm. They're great to be on our teams because they're always kind of our cheerleaders. They're the ones that just help us see the good things going on in a situation. They really dislike negativity. They're very positive people. And if things start getting too negative, normally they'll excuse themselves from the situation because they really want to be around positive and positiveness. So our next emotive category, our language, is the responder. And the difference, I don't know what's going on. This has never happened to me before. So I have no clue why this is happening. I apologize, you guys.
It's okay, Dana. This happened to my computer the other day when I have a class.
I'm like, why is it happening? It never does this. Okay. So the responder. So our responders are, and I love the word responder, and I think it meant so much to us, during this last year, because your responder, you see the heart in the hand. The responder is people, they feel deeply, they care, they have compassion, they're very compassionate, they're very creative, and they're very passionate about anything that they do. They do it with a lot of passion. And the thing about a responder, and we always heard the words first responders. A lot of your nurses tend to be high responders on their profiles. Also, teachers tend to be high responders on their profiles. The other interesting thing is people that are in sports, like football players, are also high responder, which I found very interesting. However, I think part of that is because they like to work in teams. They like to be with other people. And they love to first be, and they're also very passionate about what they do. Your responder is your most creative language. A lot of your people that are extremely creative tend to have a high responder. My daughter is an artist, and her second language is responder, with her first being a contemplator. So what are the keys to success? So the filter question for a responder is, do you really care? So again, they're very caring, they're very passionate. So they want to know, do you care? Do you care about them? Do you care about the situation? Do you care about what they're talking about? They want to know, do you really care? And their need from others is acceptance. Do you accept them for who they are and to be heard and understood? If you're ever in an argument with a responder, or you have a falling out, or something happens in your relationship, they just want to have the opportunity to talk with you and to make sure that their side of the story is heard and that they're understood. And they're hoping that in that you'll accept them for who they are, and that you'll forgive them, or that you'll heal their relationship and keep going with them. The other thing about responders is they are the kind of people that will give people, let's say if they have someone in their life that tends to mess up a lot, they're the ones that it's going to give you, 50 chances to do something right. They're very forgiving. They're very kind. Their passion is to please and protect. They really want to please others, but they are going to protect their friendships. They're going to protect their family It's very important to them to please, but also to protect those themselves and those around them. And again, their key character strength is compassion. They just have that big heart. They're compassionate towards others. They're more where your influencer is really someone, they get to know a lot of people, and they're going to speak to groups, and they're not concerned with being in groups, and they want to know how's everybody doing. They're very inclusive. Your responder is very one-on-one. They want to know, how are you feeling? How are you doing? They're very concerned about the individual and making sure that each individual is doing okay. And now we're going to get into our last set of category, and it's the cognitive intelligence. And these are people who approach life and communication through thinking first. And as I mentioned, my profile, my first 3 languages are exactly in this order. I am a first shaper, producer, then contemplator. So I am a very deep thinker. And I know that Ivy's also a first language shaper. So the characteristics are they're very organized, they're strategic, and they're focused. We as shapers love it when things are organized, when things are in their place. We're very strategic in the respect that oftentimes in our minds we're thinking 2 and 3 steps ahead, and we're thinking, okay, how is that going to play out? We may play out multiple scenarios in our minds, saying if we're going to do plan B, if we do plan A or C, what's that going to look like? So we're very strategic in our thoughts. And also we can be very focused. I know one of the things with my husband and I, when I start working on something or I'm reading something, I do not hear anything around me. And we've had conversations where he's talking to me. I have no clue that he's talking to me because I'm so focused on what I'm doing. And he'll say something like, "Don't you hear me?" And I'll say, "No, I don't," because I was really focused on what I was reading. And he doesn't understand. He's like, "Why can't you hear me?" And so I've had to help him understand that if he really needs my attention, if I'm in the middle of something and he needs my attention, he needs to get in front of me and make sure he has my attention, because I can be so focused on something, it's like my ears turn off. I don't hear. So that's why it's so good to know, especially maybe what your spouse's languages are and what their top languages are, because then it helps you just to have conversations about, that's part of my shaper. I'm very focused. I'm sorry. I will do my best. But one of the things that you can do to help me is just, kind of get in my face or get my attention and make sure you have my attention before you speak to me. So what are the keys to success of a shaper? The filter question is, do you have a plan? And that is so true for me. And that's another kind of quick, funny story with my husband and I. When we first met, I remember I used to ask him this all the time. What's the plan for the day? What are we going to do for the day? What's the plan? And he would always go, we have to have a plan. He's a high mover, and movers just want to go. They don't want to have a plan. And so, so we were together for a little while. And one day he came to me and he said, "Hey, I have a plan." And I was like, so excited. I got so excited that he had a plan. So it's so funny how certain things about us, but I'm certain that many times a day I ask, what's the plan? So it's just a part of who I am. The need from others is support and agreement. So the important thing for a shaper is that not only do we can share ideas, or maybe we have ideas, but we want to make sure that we get your support and agreement to the idea. And it's not to say that you can disagree with us, and that's fine. And let's talk about it so that we can get on common ground and have that agreement, and for us to know that you support, what the team's going to do or what we're going to do, that we have your support in it. And our passion is to lead. So of all the 7 languages and all the data that Life Languages has collected, normally your leaders, your CEOs, people that are in chief leading positions in organizations tend to be shaper. That is the primary language of leadership. However, I will tell you the other 2 is mover and influencer. If someone has shaper, mover, influencer in their top 3, they're probably a very successful leader because of the combination of those languages. But the passion of a shaper is to lead. And if we're in a situation that to us looks like a little chaotic, and we don't know who the leader is supposed to be, we'll take over being the lead just to try to get things in order because, again, we like to be organized. And then our key character strength is patience, but it's just not patience in general. It's patience to the plan. So if we know there's a plan in place and we're working to the plan, then we have all the patience in the world for that plan. For instance, if we know that on Friday we're supposed to paint the house and it's not until Friday, then we won't worry about it until Friday because that's the plan. So we have all kinds of patience as long as it's for the plan. The next category for cognitive is the producer. And the major characteristics of the producer is they're financially adept, they're hospitable, and they're resourceful. So a lot of times your producers may be your controllers in organizations. They may be the individuals, that are on the finance team, in maybe a nonprofit organization. So they really love finances and they're usually pretty good at it. Now, not everybody that's a producer just innately is good at finances, but they tend to like to learn about numbers and financial things. I love numbers. So that's just something that they enjoy. They also are very hospitable. They love having people, maybe over at their home. They love, like, if they're in a meeting or if they're chairing a meeting, they're going to make sure everybody's comfortable. Does everybody, is the temperature right in the room? Does everybody have water? They're just going to be hospitable. And they also tend to be very resourceful. For instance, your influencer is in a big room of people. They're meeting people, they're talking, they're making sure people are connecting. They want to connect people. Like if they know their friend Judy needs a plumber, they'll go introduce them to a plumber. Whereas your producer is looking at resources. Whenever they're meeting people, they're saying, okay, what kind of resource could this person be? So they're oftentimes thinking about resources. And also in organizations, they're making sure, especially like your controllers or managers that happen to be a high-end producer, are making sure that the resources that are needed to get a project done or a plan done are available, and they know where to go to get the resources. So the keys to success of a producer. The filter question is, are you managing your life? So your producers are very good at managing, but they want to know, are you managing things well? Are you managing your organization well? So they're it's very important to them to see people managing well. Their need from others is appreciation, similar to your doer wants to be appreciated. Your producer does also. They want to just be appreciated for the things that they do, for the fact that they manage well, but also they give thoughtful gifts, and they enjoy receiving thoughtful gifts. So a lot of times your producers are those people that, maybe you'll mention something like, just in passing, that I wanted to have I love red roses or something like that. And they'll, if they send you flowers, you're going to know that a producer is going to make sure that it's red, because if they know that that's something that's important to you. So they're very thoughtful in their gifts. And their passion is to manage. Again, they want to know, are you managing your life? Because to them, management is so important. It's so important to manage well. And again, their key character strength is resourcefulness. They're very resourceful. They're usually the people, like I said, that maybe know where to get the latest gadget, or who do you need to go to have good coaching, or whatever it may be. But they're going to be your person that you can knows about where resources are and how well to handle resources also. They're ones that are going to handle, whether it be a budget or a job, they're going to handle the resources on that job very, very well. All right, and our last language that we're going to talk about is the contemplator. Your contemplator's major characteristics is they're very intelligent. Oftentimes, people that have a contemplator as their primary language have a very high IQ. They're very inquisitive. They love asking questions. If you have a child that is constantly asking you questions, it's very possible that they're a contemplator. And they're very philosophical. They like to think about things. They just like to, think about theories. And they just want to research things, know things. It's just really important to a contemplator. That's why you see their icon is the brain. They're just oftentimes they are the very deepest of the thinkers. And their keys to success, the filter questions. So the contemplator is the only language that asks the filter question inwardly instead of outwardly. Their question is, am I really interested in this? So oftentimes it's very difficult to get contemplators to do things that they're not interested in, because their filter question is, am I interested in this? And here is the interesting thing about my family. My husband is first language contemplator. My daughter is first language contemplator. I am third language contemplator. So for us to decide to do something together is interesting, because we have to know, are we all interested in it? So we have to find common ground, common things that we all like whenever we go do something, so that we're all interested in it, or we're going to lose one of us because of the disinterest. So it's also very important whenever you have contemplators in your life to realize that it may not be that they're bored or that they don't like you. It just may be that they're just not interested in whatever it is that's going on or what you're doing. Their need from others, though, is undivided attention or personal space. So my daughter, whenever she was young, I wish I would have known this then, because what I've learned through time, because she tends to be very quiet, she's very introspective, spent a lot of time, she's now an adult, but spent a lot of time kind of in her room on the computer and things like that. But when she would come out of her room and she would want my attention, when she was younger, I can't say that I always gave her my undivided attention, but now that she's older, and when she lived with us as she was older and I knew about life languages, I made sure that I dropped everything, because normally if she was coming to talk to me, it meant she really had something important to say, and I needed to give her my undivided attention. The other thing about contemplators is they definitely want their personal space. My husband is a first language contemplator. And when we first were getting serious and talking about marriage and so forth, he told me he had to have his own room, his own guy town, as we call it. And that's because he needs his own personal space. He needs a place to go that he can just think or do whatever it is that he wants to do and just have his own space. And understanding that and knowing that helped me not get offended by the fact that sometimes he just wants to go be alone. The passion of a contemplator is to know. Again, they really like to study and research things. They love to read. I'm constantly reading books because we just love to know new things. And their key character strength is loyalty. They are very loyal. A contemplator may have friends that they haven't spoken to in maybe 5 years, but they still consider them very close friends, and they still consider that they're very loyal to those individuals. So loyalty is very important to a contemplator. They also may not just be loyal to a person. They can be very loyal to your organization and to their company, to their job. So as I mentioned before, at Life Languages, we believe there are not 7 billion people in the world, that there are only 7, and that each of us has all 7 languages, maybe just in different orders. But as we understand each other's languages, we can better communicate and better connect with one another. So what your life language profile helps you understand and know is all the different languages and how you can better interact with them and how you can better know them as you meet people for the first time. So again, our objective was to become self-aware and to internalize the 7 life languages. And I hope this very fast just kind of peek at them, piqued your interest and helps you want to know a little bit more. And then I'm just going to stop here because these are just some comments that we got back from individuals on the life languages. And I will just turn it over to Ivy and see if there are questions.
Okay, thank you so much for this kind of comprehensive information about the different languages. It's still like interesting to me when I listen to it again. And when I listened to it, I noticed that I'm kind of realizing, okay, my husband is doer, mover, producer, and I have my own profile already. So that said, we don't have any like common language. But the truth is still we are very different person. So the question comes up for me, is that these different 7 languages, they have different characteristics. And you mentioned, I know in your presentation, that we are not labeling, these people with their language. And also at the same time, when we think, okay, the people who has the language of mover, producer, and the shaper, most probably they can be leaders, very successful leaders. But my question is, if the people who don't have this kind of language, shall they still like pursue the leadership roles in their workplace, or how help us to understand better about that?
Yeah, any language can lead. So absolutely, it doesn't matter what your primary language is, any language can lead. It's just in our studies that we have found more of the shapers and movers and influencers tend to be the top leaders, but it doesn't mean you can't lead. I have a very close friend, in fact, my best friend. She is a high doer and she's an excellent manager for the job that she has. So she's excellent with people, high doer. So yes, any language can lead.
So that means she has to learn more or spend more effort in speaking the different languages than the doer, right? For example, the maybe shaper,
right. But it also the role that she's in. So she creates electronic labeling for a medical device. It's very detailed, and all her staff has to be very detailed in what they do. So I think because of the role that she's in, it also helps her excel because doers are very detail oriented and they're very good at it. So I think that helps her to excel in what she is.
Okay, thank you. My second question is, as we know, every language has its own strength and weakness. I saw one audience have this question about the weakness or pitfall of each language. For I have my top language is Shaper. I know this, the strength or the characteristic is very visionary, strategic, and focused. But at the same time, I may judge myself, being casual, don't pay much attention to the details, and they're not very sensitive to the people around me. So that kind of thing. So I like the qualities, the good qualities of the language. At the same time, maybe I will judge myself, being the pitfall, of this language, how to kind of look at this conflict.
So all the languages do have what we call essential qualities to develop. And what you can do to develop those qualities, there's also there's positive character qualities that each language also has. And so by focusing on the positive character qualities that your language has, it helps you develop those areas where you may be weaker. The other thing too is, Ivy, I have your profile near me, and your 7th language is doer. And that doer is, maybe is a very detailed person, and you may not feel like you're maybe very detailed, but you can always, because we all have all 7 languages, we can decide to work on one of our lower languages. So it's not impossible to work on a language if you feel that the role that you're in or whatever that you may be doing you would do better if you worked in that, worked on that language. However, I will tell you that if you're in a role where you're actually getting to work in your top languages, the passions of your top languages, more people are happier in those roles. But we all have things in our jobs that we don't enjoy. And there's always a part of the job that we don't enjoy. And you can work on those. It doesn't mean that you can't work on those, but don't feel bad about yourself because it's harder for you. I agree. I'm a shaper. We tend to be very hard on ourselves. We tend to be very judgmental of ourselves. So we both have to, we have to give ourselves grace and allow ourselves to know that we can't be perfect.
Okay, thank you so much. And I understand that each language has its own like light, for people to see. They have their own uniqueness, right? So at the same time, we honor ourselves,
Yes.
have our own like special quality in our communication style. At the same time, we honor other people's speaking their language. So when we honor other people's, we try to connect with them. We can I think it's important to believe that we are able to speak different languages, to speak all the 7 languages.
Yes.
I really appreciate that. And also I am still learning how to speak my lower language. The doer is really like 20 something for me. It's very low. Okay, the next question is to having known my top language, my uniqueness in my communication, how to live it out. Because like you said, sometimes we have fear, we have doubt, right? To kind of live out, to show up, to really communicate from our hearts, which, we feel so much urge to communicate, but still we kind of stay quiet, as you say, and how to overcome fear or doubt in our communication.
So I would say one of the things that really causes us fear is the unknown of what we're going to say and how it's going to impact the other person, right? And how what we say, how it's going to be accepted, right? So I think as we connect with someone, so whenever you meet someone, or if you're let's just say you're in a group of people, if you'll listen for the most important thing is to listen first. Let me just say that. Stop for a minute and listen to the conversation going on to you or around you, because you're going to be able to pick up very quickly at least the category of the people that you're around on what their primary languages are. You're going to hear them use act words. You're going to either hear them use feel words, or you're going to hear them use think words. They'll say like, what do you think about that? Or how do you feel about that? Or, I really think we need to do something about this. If you just sit back and listen for a few minutes and kind of where those people are coming from, then you can begin to connect with them where they are. I think we're oftentimes fearful to speak because we are afraid we're going to offend. But if you're reaching across, and let's say you're a shaper reaching across to a mover, my husband is a high mover, but it's my last language. It's my 7th language. Okay. So it's the hardest for me to understand. But if I'm listening to where he wants to take action or how he wants to take action, then I'm bridging across to really understand them. So I really think it comes from being respectful and not being afraid to try to bridge that, to reach across that bridge and understand what the other person or who the other people are. But I think it all starts with really listening to the people that are speaking and just trying to figure out where are they coming from. Are they an act first, a feel first, or a think first type of person?
Okay,
I
so
don't know if
I
that
guess,
helps.
yeah, definitely. So I guess listening first, and at the same time, we need to know about these 7 types. Was when you talk about, okay, if they are active first or feel first, that means we have to know this language and their characteristics, so we can tell where they come from, right? And we can kind of try to meet them where they are by using their language to communicate better. So yeah, this also is my another question: how to know, the type of other people if it's not our, very close family member, maybe it's a colleagues in workplace. How we know where they are from? How, and also what's the decision process to kind of where to move? Because sometimes I can move to their side, or they can move to our side, or we can move in the middle. So how to balance that? How to tell?
So first of all, if they don't know about like languages, you're going to already have an advantage because, right, you're going to already be the person with the advantage because they're going to not know, but you're going to know to listen for feel words, act words, or think words, right? So unless they know life languages, you're going to have to be the one that actually stretches across first. If they're using act words, the way you can tell a difference between a mover and a doer, because they're both act, is, are they talking about innovation, ideas? Are they visionaries? Are they really getting into details? Is it taking them a really long time to tell you the story because they're telling you every detail? So you'll learn ways to tell first about the category and then how to decipher the three languages, or the two languages in the category, except for think, which is three. It just becomes, you have to like practice it for it to become more natural for you. Now, if you're speaking to someone that knows the languages, like for instance, when my husband and I or my daughter and I have conversations, we just actually say, like, my husband is high contemplator, but also high mover. Contemplators and movers are very different languages. So sometimes I actually have to ask him, are you speaking contemplator right now? Or are you speaking mover? I need to know, because mover is a low language for me. And so sometimes we just talk life languages. We use the life languages as conversation, and we just ask each other, okay, are you in this mode right now? Are you in mover mode right now? Or are you in contemplator mode? Because movers want to act, contemplators want to think. They're going to act, they're going to portray themselves very differently. So
this is interesting, to involve the whole families or the whole team, to understand the life languages. But what about the people, like in general aspects, maybe who don't understand the life languages, how to really use the simple, practical methods to involve them and increase the effectiveness in the communication?
I think that just comes down to just communication in general. I don't even know that it's a life language kind of thing. When you come and interact with people and you first come across with respect, honor, kindness, you use those character qualities, just being of good character. That is going to be the first thing that anybody is going to want to be able to communicate with you, right? I believe that when you have kindness and honor, it equals influence. And so you can influence people a lot by just how you come across to them. If you come across to them as somebody that really wants, because remember, every person wants to be heard and understood. If you're quiet enough to allow them to speak and hear what they're trying to tell you, a lot of people don't give other people enough time to speak. They are just waiting to say the word they want to say, right? They just want to get into the conversation. But I think it's just really to act in kindness and really allow individuals to talk to us and to tell us their heart. And I believe that's what really helps us to communicate better. It's all from us coming from kindness, from the heart of kindness and honor and respect.
That's more of like a character based.
Yes. Very character based, yes.
Cool. So I have two specific questions from our audience. One is the girl who has a good friend she values a lot in her life, but what concerns her is that her friend responded to her differently in different occasions. When she texts her, right, a few times, it seems unpredictable to her, the response from her friend. So on one hand, she is afraid her way to interact is not preferred by her friend, but on the other hand, she is very concerned how she should maintain the friendship, since her way seems not to be her friend's way. Kind of, they don't meet each other. So how would you advise her?
So first, I would say everybody needs to be their authentic self, right? She shouldn't be afraid to be herself around her friend. Again, if you get back to those character qualities, a true friend will accept you for who you are. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, it's not uncommon to see, even with life languages, some people have multiple languages that are, remember when I talked about the gap and I said some languages are very close together, maybe below 5? there are actually people that have very compressed scores. And that means that they go between languages very easily, maybe multiple languages. I know one person that has 6 languages above 50. Okay, so they speak 6 languages well. The downside to that is sometimes it's very hard to read them. And as your friend said, they come across 1 minute acting one way and then another minute acting another way. And you're like, who am I talking to? Right? And it could be that they have multiple languages high above 50, and they move between them, depending on the situation. And so knowing that and recognizing that the other person may not even be aware. They may not be aware of the fact that sometimes they come across as a doer and other times they come across as a shaper. So I think just having the open conversation with them and saying, sometimes whenever we talk, you respond this way, but sometimes you respond that way. Help me understand, more about why that is. And because I want to understand you better. I want to communicate with you better. I think it's just, again, being open in your communication and being transparent with them and letting them know you want to understand them better and you want to get to know them more. That's, you just have to, again, some of that fear has to be set aside and allow your kindness and your desire to really be a good friend to that friend, to weigh more than the fear that you have that you might offend them.
Mm-hmm. So still be willing to take the risk and communicate with a friend about the way they both like, right? To maintain the friendship. Cool.
But if you start it with kindness and respect, I believe that they will listen.
Good point. Follow just your comments with a question about, we have our own uniqueness. So we speak our unique language in communication. But at other times we have to pick up other languages. We have to give it up. We have to fit in, right? To kind of consider other people's needs. So how to balance this kind of stand out as an individual and the fitting stuff? How to balance that?
That's a hard question, Ivy.
I know. Just any thoughts about that?
I would say you always want to be your unique self, because it's the uniqueness. Actually, you know what? I will say, let me say it this way. I was reading this morning. I do a kind of a quiet time every morning, and I was doing a reading. And I came across this quote from Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa was a Catholic nun who was always helping the poor. Mm-hmm. And this is what she said: "What I can do, you cannot. What you can do, I cannot. But together, we can do something beautiful." And I thought that was so wonderful. So I think that, yes, sometimes we come out as our unique self and we want our uniqueness to come across because we will have skills that other people may not have that they may need. But then other times, maybe we just need to kind of not, shine our light so much, right? And to understand other people's qualities, characteristics that they have and skills that they have that we need so that we can build something beautiful together. So it's bringing out our goodness, being willing to not always shine our light, to allow other people to shine their light so that we can understand what their strengths, what they're good at, where they can bring their goodness to whatever project we have or whatever, we may be working on or endeavoring to do, and then combining that to make something even better.
Wow, I love this answer. And it's not from if or not we will keep our light shining, which means keep our uniqueness, be seen, be showing up, but about the system, the team, how the people around us as a system work better, perform better, right? Yeah. So that's so great. It's kind of criteria or standard are different. Yeah. Great. So another, the second specific question I have is in, I think is the scenario in the workplace. So she asked how to remove the assumption in communication. Sometimes she is the initiator, sometimes she's a kind of a receiver of the message.
So how to remove the assumption? Is that what you said, assumption?
Yes, assumption.
Yeah. I think that assumptions oftentimes come with preconceived ideas, right? And so I think the way you remove an assumption is, again, and I'm sorry I'm repeating myself, but it's through truly listening. Also, though, actually, I'm going to say two things. I just had a thought that came to me. One is truly listening, trying to make sure you really hear. The other time, so that we can remove assumptions, is by asking really great questions. So ask for clarifying questions. Ask to get deeper into the detail of the conversation, so that you can be sure, or they can be sure, that what you're assuming is or is not true, right? So I think sometimes the way that you can remove assumption is by asking some very, very deep and good questions.
Mm-hmm. Like what question we may be able to ask to remove this assumption?
So I don't think there's just one, but I will give you some advice. So right now I'm reading two very good books. So this one is by John Maxwell, and it's called Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. It's all about an art of asking questions. And then I'm also reading a book called Successful Women Speak Differently, and it's by Valerie Burton. And she has a part in it that talks about asking questions. And what she says, and I actually have that quote in front of me, she says, be intentional about asking powerful questions when you want to find out the right solution to a problem, when you want to help someone navigate a challenge or an opportunity, when you want to better understand something or someone. And I think that better understanding something or someone is oftentimes removing assumptions, right? So, and coming up with questions, have your own list of great questions that could help, that you believe would help you better understand a situation. And if you're going into a meeting, or if you're going into a team, or whatever it may be, with a friendship, if there are certain things where you believe assumptions are out there that you believe are not true, ahead of time, think of some questions that you can ask that person to help remove the assumptions. So I think maybe through asking questions, but it's going to take some forethought. And I don't have the magic question because it will depend on the situation, right?
That's great. I think they will feel the urge to ask any question to clarify the situation. So even though they may have assumption already, but if they have this self-awareness, they can kind of stop and ask this question for themselves first, and then they can go out to communicate with the people in the situation. That's great. Yeah. So I may have the final question for you. Yeah, I have a lot of questions. The final question is, I know you have many years of experience in corporate and also in your business. I know you have worked with many like Asian American in the workplace or in your business. What's your observation about their communication? And also, what's your special advice for them to increase the visibility in their workplace, in their career?
Okay. Mm-hmm. I do coach Asian Americans, and I have worked with them. I love working with them. And I will say two things of observation. One is oftentimes they're very soft-spoken. So be sure that you raise the octave of your voice, and so that you're heard. I will tell you, for me personally, I'm from the South, and the South of the United States. And when I first started working for the company that I worked for forever, which was Abbott, for 30 years, people would make fun of me because of my accent, because I have a very Southern accent. And
okay,
so I
thought it was only like Chinese accent kind of we care about.
No, they would laugh at me on phone calls. So I decided to start lowering the octave of my voice. So I practiced lowering the octave of my voice so that I didn't come across as twangy or with the accent that I have. So I actually practiced speaking better So, and there are sometimes, depending on who I'm around, I may come up with more of my Texas accent, but a lot of people tell me I don't sound like I'm from Texas, but I really worked on it. I worked on not having an accent so that I could communicate better, and because people would laugh at me and I didn't want to be laughed at. But so I would say that's one thing. The other thing too is don't be afraid to speak. Understand that everybody's input is important. And I will say this especially to Asian women. Don't be afraid to speak. A lot of times I've noticed that you want to be in the background, you don't want to be up front. One of my biggest advices that I can give to anyone I have a thing called that I believe is important, which is called executive presence. Okay. When you walk into a room, let's say you're going into a conference room and there's a meeting going on, come in with confidence, come in with, a confident look on your face, and be sure that you're prepared for the meeting. If there were any materials, read them ahead of time, make sure you're prepared. If there weren't meeting materials provided before the meeting, ask if there was an agenda. If one wasn't given, be prepared for the meeting, and come in with confidence. And when you come in with confidence, if it's not against the kind of the company culture or even the culture that you're from, sit at the table. A lot of times in big conference rooms, there's a big table and then there's chairs along the wall. Sit at the table unless there's some reason you can't sit at the table, because sitting at the table shows confidence. It shows the other people in the room that you want to be included in the conversation, but it also shows yourself. It gives you kind of a thing about yourself where you're like, I'm in this. I'm going to make myself, and sometimes you have to make yourself, I'm going to make myself be involved. I'm going to listen. I'm going to be in the moment, and I'm going to be a part of this. And so sometimes sitting at the table gives you additional courage to speak. So I always, especially tell the women that I coach, and is to sit at the table unless there's some reason why you can't. Sit at the table, and when you speak with confidence. And again, part of what I'm learning, ask good questions. Learn how to ask really good questions. If you had a chance to look over the material, jot down some notes of questions that you might want to ask, because your questions aren't just for you, they're for everybody. Because more than likely somebody else in the room has the same question you do. And they're just, again, kind of afraid to say it. So be the one with the courage to say it.
Thank you so much, Dan. I think this thing is very applicable to Chinese American, to me as well, because I still remember when I firstly came over to United States to, sit in the classroom of Yale University. Wow, my goodness. I kind of so fearful, I didn't want to speak up, didn't want to express my opinions. So that could be the profile of many Chinese students in university. I think I can notice I'm improving a lot right now. I'm still have accents, but I truly understand the essence of communication is not about the language we speak. It's about, quote unquote, the 7 life language is different one, right? So it's not about English, how well we speak English. It's about really how we filter the questions, filter the message, how we kind of react, how we think, how we feel, and how we want to connect with the other person. So that kind of thing really drives me to change a lot, even though I'm still have still strong accents, but that's not my point. That's not the thing I really care about. I don't care about that part. I just want to know more about you and about your your thoughts and your sharing. Yeah. So now,
and also, I was just gonna say, and also realize it's not just Asian Americans. I have a friend that's from the Ukraine. I have friends from, America has people from all countries, and a lot of people struggle with, either their accent or, are they understood or can they speak out? So realize that none of you are alone. We all have these feelings that come across from time to time that might kind of try to steal our courage. But we all can be people that want to learn and want to get better. I'm constantly reading to try to be better. And so I think just having a learning attitude and wanting to improve ourselves is the key to success for all of us.
Okay, thank you. So now I think it's time to open up for the friends and audience the question in the chat box. So
Okay.
how about you can select the questions from the chat box and for Diana to answer. Is that okay?
Sounds good. Yeah, there are tons of questions here, so I'll try my best to cover as many as possible. And so a few people are asking, we like what you're sharing, but it sounds a little bit too theoretical. So can you provide a bit more examples, and how do you actually apply it in real life and some case studies? And one specific question on that is, can you compare a shaper versus a responder talking?
Yes. So a shaper and a responder. Well, that's me and my sister. My sister is first language responder. I'm a first language shaper. And so my sister, whenever we talk, oftentimes I'm very technical. I'm very about facts. I don't give a lot of feel words. Mine are very, I guess you could say that you could even say they're very direct, or direct's not the right word because that's a mover, but I don't give a lot of fluff. My sister is a responder. Hers is all feel. And she gives a lot of description. She gives a lot of, information about how it made her feel, what was going on in the situation. So when we speak, and honestly, I'll tell you that life languages helped me tremendously with my sister because I considered her a little bit of a drama queen. And a lot of times I didn't want to hear her stories that were, took her 30 minutes to tell me, what happened to her on, at the grocery store today. But I had to learn to accept her for who she was and to learn that that was just her way of communicating with me. And once I did that, once I finally just said, you know what, this is who she is. And she just has a different way of communicating. She wants to tell me more about the story. I just want to get things said and done. It really improved our relationship because I really think that a lot of it was me, not her. And so a lot of times between a shaper and a responder, the shaper needs to spend time with the responder and allow them to tell their story and listen to the feel words, because a lot of times we're very, sometimes it can appear as if a shaper is uncaring, and it's not that we're uncaring. It's just that we're constantly thinking about what we need to do next to stay on the plan. Hopefully that helped.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And there's some follow-up questions on how do we use it in our day-to-day communication, and how to tell the life languages type of each person. I guess you kind of mentioned it in earlier, basically just pay attention to the words they use and things like that.
Yeah, and there's a lot more characteristics. Normally when I do a training on life languages, it's 6 hours long. So you guys got 45 minutes of it. Right. It's normally a 6-hour class. So there's a lot more that goes into it, a lot more of the characteristics, qualities of each language that will help you then be able to tell the languages more easily. I just gave you a taste. So, but a lot of it's just, like I said, our second goal was to internalize the life languages, and it takes time. I've been doing it for a couple of, 3-4 years now. I've known about life languages. I've been coaching for over a year now. And so in the languages, and I mean, I still learn. I'm still learning every time I go out, especially with coaches that have been doing it a lot longer than I have. So it's something that you have to continually, study and learn, but you can use it in your day-to-day activities. We have, for instance, I'll give you a for instance, we have a tool that you can use that actually helps you run meetings. And as you run your meeting, you go through the languages. So you start your meeting with a responder because you want to make sure everybody's okay. The next thing you move to is influencers. You talk about kind of your day, make sure everybody, you know, that everybody's connecting. Then you move into your shaper. What is the agenda? So it takes you through the whole meeting, but you touch on each language to make sure everybody gets you know, everybody has different primary languages. So everybody gets to contribute, and you're using all 7 languages during a meeting. We have multiple tools that you can use, but that's just one example of how you can use it kind of in your everyday work life. And like I said, there's a lot more that I could tell you that we couldn't cover in this short time that we have.
Right. I'm posting the information about Diana's website and also the link for you to, if you want to have a like assessment, the full assessment online. There's a link over there. I will post it in the chat box.
And here is an interesting question that is specifically on the workplace. So what kind of personalities, or what kind of, I guess, the languages, I guess, a company or organization would be looking for in a job candidate?
All of them. And the reason I say that is because everybody brings uniqueness. So for instance, if you had, I currently work with one company. It's been very interesting because the CEO of the company has known about life languages for years, and he's been using it in his business, but he never had anybody come in and actually train or coach until last year, and I did that for him. But I noticed when I pulled their profiles, I did a company profile and I pulled for all the employees, and this company is about 17 employees total. They all had influencer top in one of their top 3s and shaper in their top 3. And I found that so interesting. And it was because he was looking for influencer shapers. He has an organization that sells insurance. He wanted good salespeople, so he wanted influencers, and he wanted shapers because he wanted people to meet, you know, their plans. And I found that was so interesting. He was specifically listening for, as he interviewed people, to see, you know, what their top languages were. But the downside was he didn't have very many contemplators in his staff. Well, contemplators are your deep thinkers. A lot of times your contemplators are engineers, or people that are really detail oriented, but also very intelligent. The company sells to engineering firms. If they had more contemplators on their staff, they might understand their customer base better. So you want to have all the languages, and you want to have people that speak all the languages. Of course, we all speak all 7, but you want to have people that speak them in their primary, just so that you're well-rounded and you're bringing in the wonderful characteristics and qualities of all the languages to make your organization more diverse. I mean, we talk about diversity and inclusion. You need to have all languages to ensure that you're a better performing organization.
Thank you. And here are a few questions related to how we started to form these our primary. You know, we all have 7, but we have a few primary ones. How did we form those primary languages? And do these change over time, or even change depending on who you talk to or the situation? And also, once we have that self-awareness and we want to develop some specific life languages, how do we do that? I know it's a loaded question.
Yeah, a loaded question, but great question. So, because we get this question quite often, actually. So we believe, and based on the 30 years of study that Life Languages has done, that your languages are part of who you were from the point that you were born. We actually have profiles that you can give children. And we truly believe that you can begin to recognize the languages in young children. That's why we call it a driving passion, for instance. The languages all have a driving passion, because most people have had that passion within them, somewhere within them, and have not been fulfilled unless they're living out that passion since they were very young. So you will see it from youth. However, can it change? Normally, for most people, what we have found is their primary language, their top language, and their 7th language oftentimes do not change, especially if they have a broad range, which in the profile I showed you the range. If they have a broad range from their 1st to their 7th, they oftentimes won't change. 1st and 7th won't change. However, the ones in between can, and they do move around a little bit. And some of it has to do with what's going on in their life. For instance, for me, I took the profile in 2018 18, when I was still working in corporate America. And that's when I first was introduced to life languages. It was actually through my church. They give all of our new people in our church, new members, take life languages, which is very interesting. But I took it then, and then when I retired from my corporate role after 30 years and started my business, I took it again, and mine did change slightly. And it's changed in my top 3. It used to be that my first language was shaper, always shaper, then contemplator, then producer, and then it flipped from producer to contemplator. And I believe that today, because I own my own business, I'm no longer answering to anybody but myself. I am actually living the life that I love. I am doing what I love. I'm more my authentic self than I've ever been in my entire life. I believe that my profile now is the most true profile that I've ever had. So, and it's because I'm getting to do every day what I love. What we noticed during COVID with people being at home is their contemplators on their scores went higher, because your contemplator is someone that wants their own space. They are kind of more inward thinking. And because we all had to be home so much, we began to be more inward thinkers. And because we were more alone than we'd been probably maybe some of us in our entire lives. So yes, they can move around, but usually there's a reason for it. And when we coach people and we notice a change in their profile, we'll talk through with them and help them discover why it may be that their profile changed. But like I said, oftentimes your primary and your 7th language won't move.
I will echo you with this too, because my top 3 language is shaper, 2nd is influencer, and the 3rd is responder, right? So I think nowadays, I think at this moment, I love my life, my job, so like passionately. So that's why I think, oh, this is a perfect combination. And also I understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. Like I'm a responder, so I really care one-on-one. So that's why I'm doing the life coach. I really care about the other person, and also I love this deep connection with them. And also I'm a influencer, so that's kind of the big group, right? The party and the sales. So that kind of thing, I'm also, I love that part too. So that's why I started the group program from this year. I enjoy that part. So that's kind of complete in my life and in my passion. I really love the life languages, gave me who I am, and also gave me the bigger picture of who I could become. So that's still like areas I can develop, right? So I really love it. Okay, so Yu, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you.
We have different audience asking similar questions that I think might apply to many of us coming from this, not from US and being Asian American here. And basically, when they speak up at important meetings, they still don't get acknowledgement. But when someone else, typically a man, repeating the same points, and this person got the credit and acknowledgement, anything that could have been done differently. And then similarly, another person raised, basically made a comment saying that the problem is not so much about us not speaking up. The problem is when we do speak up, people still tend to ignore you. That reminds me of the article that recently been published in New York Times about interchangeable Asian, basically how Asians, all people get mixed up the names of the Asians at work, even though they've worked side by side by this person for many years. So what would be your comments on that?
Well, first I will tell you, being in corporate America for 30 years, there were many times, and I will tell you, definitely more than once, that it happened to me where I made a comment. I was the only female in the room other than a room full of men. And I may have brought up an idea or made a comment and it fell to the floor. No one noticed it until a man said it themselves. And then it was a great idea, right? So I've actually had that happen to me more than once. So I guess my only advice to that is don't give up. don't give up. Don't allow that to keep you from speaking up. Don't allow that to keep you from, what you have and what you have to say is valuable. And so don't allow the other person's lack of recognizing you, recognizing your greatness, the lack of the other person honoring you for your contribution. Don't allow them to keep you from being you and speaking up, and having the courage to keep doing it. Because one day, I promise, one day it will pay off. Don't give up. Keep speaking.
Thanks,
So
Diana.
well said.
Yeah, and I think also I've heard before that if you realize someone tend to do it repeatedly, maybe you can find an ally in a meeting that so you can prep this person beforehand. When this happens again, this other person could actually point out saying, hey, so and so already raised this point. Maybe
that's a great comment. That's excellent. And that, that's another thing that I can tell you that I highly recommend also, just for meetings and whatever, is be sure whenever you go into meetings, if you don't know everybody in the room, that you introduce yourselves. Just be sure that as you go in the room, even if you do know people, say hi to them, because that opens up the communication for everyone. And it gets you noticed as someone that wants to be a part of the meeting and a part of the conversation. But that was an excellent comment.
And there are a few other questions about the relationship of the life languages with personalities, or those Myers-Briggs tests. How are they connected? Is it about behavior psychology, or what's the foundation of, what's the theoretical foundation of this?
So the best way that I can explain it, we are complementary to the other profiles. So whether it be DISC, Myers-Briggs, because they're more personality focused, and life languages is focused on communication and really strictly on communication. How can you improve communication and communication styles? And it actually was born out of Fred and Anna Kendall. It's a couple that actually they were having issues in their marriage, and also started noticing, Fred was in the military, and he started noticing through some of the people that he worked with and through other relationships that they were having similar issues. And so they actually began working with psychology and industrial psychologists. They owned a couple of psychiatry and psychology hospitals, and began bringing in these psychologists to help them with their ideas of noticing that there were, these different types of communication, styles of communication. At one point, there were only 6, but they felt like it was missing, so they added the 7th. So, it has a full history, but a lot of it is based on psychology and industrial psychology, and just the interactions of Anna and Fred Kendall as they began to develop the 7 languages.
I believe this started from 1980s, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a
Yeah,
long.
it's been around a long time. It's just interesting. It originally was in, again, as I mentioned, it was in my church that I learned about it. It was actually in a lot of churches and a lot of hospitals, psychiatry hospitals, and psychiatrists were using it. Psychologists were using it. It wasn't actually out to the main public, and they only kind of did some rebranding and began bringing it out to the public, I think in about 2018 or 19. And so it's really it's interesting. It's been around for 30 years, but it's really only now being kind of launched to the corporate world and into the business world.
Okay.
Thank you. And one audience is also asking if you would recommend any books on communications. You've mentioned already 2 books on asking great questions, but specifically for communication, do you have any other book recommendations?
You can purchase the Communication IQ book. So that is one. I read a lot of just on, I guess for me, I don't read as much just strictly on communication as I do on just leadership in general. Because I believe that most leadership books also focus some on communication. I'm looking at my my bookcase at the moment to see if there's anything else that I can think of that might come up. If I think of any, I will let Ivy know and she can put it on the chat.
Yeah, I'm ready to mention about that. You can let us know later.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Yu?
I think that covers most of the questions.
Okay. Maybe we can, Dana, if you want, we can kind of allow some more minutes for people to open their camera or unmute themselves. They can kind of speak with you. Do you want that part as kind of the final part? Yeah. Okay, so 如果你们有更多的问题的话，然后我们可以给maybe 5 to 10 minutes, 5到10分钟。我看到 Leah 刚刚的问题已经回答了 right? Leah, do you still have questions?
Hi, yeah, well, thank you for answering my question. I actually have a quick follow-up. Diana, thanks for sharing. I'm just curious. So I think that, you know, obviously we want to be confident, appear to be confident, and you know, when we present our ideas. At the same time, I think being female and typically sort of like with smaller stature, Asian, if we appear to be sort of like too loud or too confident in some ways, could it backfire? Because somehow, you know, if we sort of, I notice sometimes when I go in and when I appear to be a little bit more docile in some ways, you would get a little bit more, you sort of, you know, people wouldn't get, especially male, wouldn't get turned off as much. Maybe I'm overthinking about it. I don't know. I would love to get your thought on that.
I think, you know, it probably depends on the male, but I don't think that, I think we have to be careful that we don't come across as arrogant or we don't come across as trying too hard, right? That's why I say to most people, just try to be your authentic self. Be the person that you are no matter what situation that you're in. And especially if you're able to be, you know, around these same individuals, maybe in more of a casual setting than just in the business setting, so they can kind of just know who you are and what you're about. But more than anything else, I would just say, be your authentic self. Be who you would be, even if you were with your mother, your brother, your sister, you know, your best friend, and try to just be that person at work also. I know it's not always easy because that, you know, depending on your corporate or business culture, politics, you know, sometimes it makes it a little bit more difficult. But I have some friends that are, you know, that I know, that I coach, that I've worked with, that are Asian Americans. And honestly, I never thought of them as being an Asian American. I don't know how to describe it to you, but I just see them as who they are. Because I find them very intelligent. I find them, you know, they just bring so much to the table. I enjoy speaking with them. I enjoy working with them. So I just want you to come across as who you are, and don't worry so much about what other people think of you. Just be you.
That's very good feedback. Thank you. And it's interesting. I don't, you know, when I'm with my friends and with my family, I'm a different person than when I'm in the corporate environment. And I don't know why. Maybe I just automatically get more guarded. So that's very good feedback. So I need to look out for that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
There's one more question in the chat box. We think, I guess it's her primary language is contemplator, second language is doer, and the third language is responder. I'm working as a therapist. I feel that sometimes it's so hard for me to do telehealth session because I need parents or caregiver to help clients during session. I feel that I'm lack of ability to influence parents to implement my treatment goals.
Yeah, I can only imagine that that's difficult. I'm not thrilled about telehealth either, but but that's my that's my responder and influencer coming out there. Because the one thing also, just so you guys know, producers, so I have second language producer, and producers really like to be in the presence of people. So for me, having to be over Zoom was really hard because I want to be in people's presence. But I totally understand that responder, contemplator, wanting to be with your patients, being able to have all the things that you need to be in their presence and help them one-on-one. I'm sure that that's very difficult. You know, I don't have a solution for you other than, you know, when you're with your patient, and did I understand correctly, you're primarily doing adolescents? Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, younger kids or adolescent, they usually use special needs, have a communication issue, have behavior issue.
Oh, yes, I can see that would be very difficult for you to be able to really read them. Is because the one thing I've found with Zoom or with any kind of telehealth is reading. I know we think we can read their body language, but reading people's true emotion over a screen is extremely difficult. So I can definitely see how that would be very hard for you to read the emotion, to get the feeling of how the person is coming across. I can't even imagine how you can do it. And I would have to give some thought to it. But right now, but I do know that, like I said, Fred and Anna Kendall work with a lot of. We actually, Life Languages has a industrial psychologist on staff. I can actually pose the question to her, and if you would like, I can get it back to Ivy.
Cool, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, we have the last question, okay, for tonight. It's Gao. Can you unmute yourself? Gao, yeah, unmute yourself. Okay.
Hey, Diane, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can.
Great. Okay. So Diane, I have two quick questions. The first question is that we all want to be perceived as confident speaker, right?
Yes.
So what do you think the speed of our speech should be conceived as confident? Is it if we speak too fast that we're considered as not that confident?
You know, I don't know about that, because I have some friends, even in Life Languages, that are from the North that I think speak lightning speed. They are so fast. I have a hard time keeping up with them. So I don't know that it has to do with speed. I think sometimes maybe it just has to do with inflection of voice, pausing. I do think even myself, I have to remind myself to pause, you know, to give people time, because your deep thinkers, your contemplators, your shapers, your producers, whenever they're posed a question, sometimes they need a few minutes to think about it, you know, to kind of mull it over in their head before they can come up with even the next thought that they want to have or something they want to say. So I think as speakers, sometimes we just need to not necessarily slow our speech down, but pause every now and then to allow everybody to catch up with us. And I'll tell you, even myself, is something, you know, that I find that I need to work on too, is remember that I have to give people time to think, you know, and to kind of work through what I'm trying to tell them. So, but I don't think it has to do with speed, because I know a number of people from, you know, they say with Southerners, we have like a drawl, we speak slower. In the North, they speak faster. And that's just a part of even the US.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Yeah, the second question is that how can we, let's say, strategically say no to other people or disagree with other people?
Let's see. How do you strategically say no? Wow, that's hard. I think, you know, a lot of it depends on the situation of what you're saying no to. But I believe part of it would be, don't be afraid to say no. And maybe along the different lines of those clarifying questions, making sure that on the flip side of that they understand your point of view, helping, you know, understand their point of view, make sure they're listened and they're understood, but making sure that they're listening and understanding you so they can understand your point of view of why you're saying no. Sometimes just a flat no leaves people with wondering why. you know? So maybe with being ready for your reason on why you're saying no. And sometimes for us, you know, we think that saying yes is always healthy for us, but it's not always. Sometimes saying no is the healthier thing for not only for us, but for the organization, because maybe the no means somebody else gets an opportunity, or the no means that we're not going to be overloaded and not be able to do the job well. So, you know, all depends on why you're saying the no.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, all right. Wow. Such a profound presentation, also the discussion. I really love this kind of brainstorming and kind of the exchange of ideas. Thank you so much, Diana, for your sharing tonight. And I love the 7 love languages, and hopefully we will kind of take this tool from tonight and really kind of look forward to better understand about ourselves and also about the people around us, including our families, our colleagues, and our kids, right? It's so applicable in every areas of our life. And also, just now you mentioned about the 6-hour workshop. I know it takes a longer time for people to understand the profound, very in-depth concepts about the tool. So we may kind of design a workshop for the people who are interested. Let's see how it goes. I will talk more with you later, okay? And also for people who are interested to know more details about 7 life language and also want to have a full assessment of your kind of profile, you can go to the link I just posted. I posted earlier in the chat box. If you don't have the link, you can join our WeChat group. I will post there as well, and also the books. Then I mentioned about the 2 books and the more books about the communication if you have. Okay, so I will call it to end, and thank you so much again for Diana, and we hope, you know, to kind of work more with you later and keep learning from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's such an honor to be able to speak to you guys this evening. And I, you know, thank you so much, Ivy. You know, I so cherish you. So thank you so much.
Same here. Okay, have a great night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. See you
Thanks.
next Wednesday.